Hey everybody, welcome to Screen Realm. It's Guillermo here, introducing an interview that our writer Adam Fleet was able to score with filmmaker Andrew Semans. Andrew is both the director and writer of Resurrection, a psychological thriller featuring fantastic performances by Rebecca Hall and Tim Roth. Rebecca Hall plays Margaret, whose life is in order and under control. She is capable, disciplined, and successful. Her teenage daughter will soon be going off to a fine university. It's all good. That is until David returns, carrying with him the horrors of Margaret's past. In the interview ahead, Adam and Andrew discuss how the overall concept was formed, the cult leader-like aspects of David's character, having the screenplay hit Hollywood's highly coveted blacklist, why teeth are creepy, and more. Hope you enjoy the interview ahead. Be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell to stay up to date with all things Screen Realm, and watch out for Resurrection, which will be available to own or rent on all major digital platforms from November 30th.
Where did the idea of Resurrection come from? Because without giving too much away, it takes us in some quite unexpected directions.
There's something I do frequently, or from time to time, I guess frequently, when I'm trying to come up with a story or a character, looking for a kernel of an idea, I'll just ask myself, what frightens me? What is something that it really terrifies me, something that is enduring and feels very primal. And in this case, I got to thinking about fears around parenthood, just basic fears of, will I be a good parent? Can I keep my child safe? Can I protect them from injury, from exploitation, and these basic concerns that any parent would have. And I was not a parent at that time, but these kind of fears really felt very real to me and resonated with me. And I thought, well, that might be an interesting jumping off point for a story, but what would the story be? And it led me to thinking about the parental vigilante or parental revenge subgenre of films, which are very popular, enduring movies like Taken or Death Wish or The Revenant.
Those are movies I would not have immediately thought of.
They're movies where you take a seemingly normal person, and when their child is threatened or imperiled, they transform into some sort of indomitable superhuman person, fueled just by pure love for their child, and they go on some sort of rampage. But a very just rampage, and we're very sympathetic to them. And I started thinking about this, and I thought, oh well, I would love to tell a story like that, but I don't know how. And I started trying to develop some ideas and develop a character. And as I was doing so, a friend of mine, a close friend of mine, got involved in a very, very unhealthy, very unpleasant relationship with a very toxic and manipulative individual. And I, witnessing this relationship firsthand and trying to understand what was happening, and trying to help my friend, I became very interested in, very preoccupied by, and very terrified by the psychology of abusers and of abuse, and by the techniques that abusers use to manipulate and control their victims. And what I was learning at that time found its way into the screenplay for this movie in a really significant way, and is very much present throughout the entire movie. And so eventually all those predilections and preoccupations came together and became this story.
Yeah, that's interesting. That sort of leads me into another the second sort of question. I think the first thing, like when you see this movie, that you have to discuss is Rebecca Hall's performance is astonishing, and Tim Roth also fantastic. And did they have to? Was that intensity implicit in the script, or was that something they really worked on? Because right from the outset, that's a really heavy dynamic between them right from the first time that we see them together.
Well, it was always intended to be quite intense. That was the idea. It was meant to be something that was visceral and frightening. And that was, I think, apparent in the script, and it was something that they knew. I mean, I didn't have to tell them. They understood the tone of the movie, and they understood what they had to do. And they were more than capable of bringing that level of emotional intensity and that kind of commitment on a moment by moment, day by day basis. It required no particular coaxing from me. They are very good actors who are very intense performers.
It's interesting you talked about Tim Roth's character David having this, the sort of abuser's psychology, because the things that kind of occurred to me, he's almost like a cult leader in his sort of, with his charisma and his ability to make her Margaret do things that she doesn't really want to do. And also the other thing, like with the kindnesses and that kind of stuff, where he's getting her in stress positions and that kind of thing, sort of torture techniques. And I wondered if those two elements had also played into the writing of his character.
Well, yeah, his character is someone, he kind of is like a cult leader without a cult, or he has had a cult of one, not a particularly successful cult leader, but had a...
Because she also talks about his power over her parents as well. So that was another thought that I had.
Yeah, well, he is someone who is a very charismatic individual, or at least at one time was a very charismatic individual, and still has maybe bits and pieces of that charisma remaining, but someone who is absolutely obsessed with control, and can never be satisfied, and is constantly craving a sense of complete dominance, probably over as many people as possible. But in the case of Margaret, Rebecca Hall's character, when she was much younger, he found someone that he was able to dominate and manipulate and control utterly. And that for him was intensely gratifying, and probably the highlight of his entire life, and is something that he has been yearning to get back ever since. And so what he does is, when he returns to her life 20 years later, he tries to recreate the relationship, recreate the abusive situation that he so thrived on 20 years previously. And so, yes, I mean, that was always an essential component of the story and the script.
Without giving anything away, sort of tiptoe around sort of the direction it takes, but did you bank on like the audience having a preconceived notion of what this movie is at the start, like this is a psychological thriller, so that when we go in some surprising directions, it has a real impact? I think,
I don't know if I was banking on anything in particular, but I like the idea of, if you can stick the landing, if it's done well. Oh, a cat.
That's Charlie. Yeah.
Oh, hi, Charlie. I like it when movies can successfully navigate from one genre to another. Now, this isn't a huge left turn, but it does move through most of the movie. It's kind of a psychological thriller, paranoid thriller, and it does move into more pure horror or supernatural territory in the third act. And I like those genre shifts within a movie if it feels justified by the narrative, if it feels psychologically consistent, and if it's not handled clumsily. And so in this case, what we were hoping for is to create a climax and create a sort of genre shift that felt psychologically, emotionally earned and consistent, so it doesn't feel like a sudden left turn that the audience has to kind of tolerate. Rather, something that feels organic, even though it does move into directions that maybe you might not anticipate in the first hour of the movie.
And I think it does work. I think the reason it works is for people to look back on it once you know the full story. All of that stuff pointing to where it's headed is there. It's just you don't know enough at the beginning to understand it. Which I think is why it's really, really effective, because then when you get to the end and you're kind of like, oh, yeah, right. And I think not clues as such, but I think that stuff was there for you to pick up on if you knew to look for it, I think.
Well, I hope so. I hope, yeah, it sort of feels retroactively consistent.
The other thing I wanted to ask about was, I believe it was a Blacklist script to start off with, and I was wondering if you could explain a little bit about what that is? Like, does having a script on that list make it easier to get a film made, or does it add like a level of expectation on top of it?
Yeah. So for those who don't know, the blacklist is a list of unproduced screenplays assembled by a large voting body of agents and producers and other people working in the film industry. It's their favorite unproduced screenplays of a particular year. And there's an American version, and I think there's a UK version now as well. And when you get a screenplay on the blacklist, it's a nice feather in your cap. It's great. It's great to be thought of as generally thought of as having generated an interesting script by the industry. And yes, it helps definitely get your movie made. It's a kind of stamp of approval. It lends a certain credibility. I don't think, once a movie is made, I don't think most people really pay much attention to whether it was a blacklist script or not a blacklist script. I don't think it adds a kind of level of pressure or expectation. But it was great. I think it did help us get the movie made.
Bit that I really liked at the beginning was when the miscellaneous tooth turns up in the wallet, in Margaret's daughter's wallet. Like, what is it? Why do you think like teeth are so creepy? Like, it reminded me, there's that bit in the Blair Witch where there's a parcel of teeth that turns up on outside the tent, and that was something that was struck with me. And I certainly find that kind of thing extremely unsettling. What is it about teeth?
Oh God, I don't know, because it's your only bones that are on the outside. Yeah. Or maybe it's the association with violence, with survival. It's teeth feel somehow particularly primal for some reason. Also, they're little bits of you that can break off but remain intact.
I think it's like, because they're quite important, aren't they? Like, you only get one set, and if you miss it, like, how does it end up, in a wallet?
And also a missing tooth implies that something knocked it out. There's a kind of sense that there was some act of violence there.
I think also it's a good setup for, like, okay, this may be going some weird places, like early on, because a tooth is not just going to randomly turn up in a wallet, and then we're not going to think about that again in this movie. Like, so, I thought it was a great bit. I've just got the notification we've got a couple of minutes left, so I'll just I was just going to ask the final question, like, what's next? What have you got planned?
Well, I have another feature that I hope to make in hopefully in the not too distant future. I'm also working on a television project. I don't want to share any details because who knows? They might happen, they might not, and I don't want to go around talking about projects that don't get off the ground.
You've got pots on the stove, basically.
Yes, I've got pots on the stove, irons in the fire. So hopefully you'll hear from me again.
Good. Yeah, I hope so too. I thought Resurrection was a terrific movie. I really, really loved it. So congratulations. It's really great.
All right. Well, thank you very much.